Knock him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in to DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. As you could probably tell, this is not Jeff Spiegel. I'm Daniel Starkand, and I'm joined by my buddy Blake Williams. And here we are, Game 1 of the NLDS. We made it through spring training. We made it through a 162-game regular season. We made it through the dreaded week off in between where we had to watch the boring wild card series, and here we are, Game 1 of the NLDS, Dodgers and Diamondbacks. Blake, how we doing?
Feeling pretty good, actually, overall, not compared to other postseasons where I've come into it nervous. I mean, I think the Dodgers are obviously the more talented team, so if they just play to their potential, they should be okay, but I guess obviously that's not always the case, what we see in the postseason, so a little nervous, but overall good.
Yeah, we were talking right before this, and I was kind of saying how my nerves are starting to hit, which is natural in the postseason. We all know how random it is. We saw firsthand what's possible last year. With that being said, though, I think all things considered, like taking on the Diamondbacks is probably best case scenario considering all the teams that are left. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, probably. I think so. The Diamondbacks are probably the weakest team left in the entire playoffs, from the AL and NL included. So it's a nice matchup to have in your first NLDS appearance here, but yeah, I mean, there's just so much randomness. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, totally. Before we get into the matchup for tonight's game, we don't got a ton of time here. First pitch is about 20 minutes or so away. Let's talk about, I guess you could call it the big news today when the Dodgers released their roster. I guess these were kind of the two surprises. They went with Kolten Wong over Ahmed Rosario as the last position player spot. And then they went with Michael Grove over Ryan Yarbrough for the final pitcher spot. To me, while these moves may be a little surprising, they kind of both make sense. To me, the Yarbrough one, especially in a short series with all these off days, you don't really need his length. And Michael Grove has actually looked pretty good coming out of the pen since he got back. And then the D-backs have a lot of right-handed pitching, so you get another lefty bat in there, and Wong over Rosario, who hasn't really been that good as of late. And also, Kolten Wong's a much superior defender, so you have that option late in games. I guess the only downside is Rosario is the fastest guy on the team, so maybe a pinch running type of situation. But were you surprised by these moves?
I was surprised in the sense that it didn't seem like Wong was really an option to make the postseason roster for quite a while. Before they really had Wong up, Dave Roberts said there are 13 guys from the position side are pretty much locked in. So that was surprising. I get the logic of it with them having more right-handed pitching than left-handed pitching, so it makes sense to have another lefty on the bench. But as you brought up, Rosario's their fastest player, and I feel like he'd probably provide more value as a potential pinch runner than Kolten Wong will in whatever role he's going to end up playing. Maybe he's a defensive substitution at some point, but I think the spots he can play, they're mostly solid there anyways already. So that was a little surprising. And then Michael Grove over Yarbrough makes sense. Yarbrough is kind of a long reliever type that they don't really need. The Diamondbacks don't hit right-handed pitching as well as they hit left-handed pitching. So to get another guy like Grove on the roster where you have plus stuff, he can go a few innings if you need it also. And he's looked really good. I think that makes sense a lot. And that's something we kind of talked about already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is all kind of nitpicking here, to be honest. Like, these are the last two spots on the roster. Like, I think if all goes according to plan, like, we might not see either Kolten Wong or Michael Grove in this series. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think I don't hate either of these moves. Let's get into tonight's matchup, though. We got a really good pitching matchup. I'm going to read off some stats here. I'm not a big stats guy, but I did write a couple down on the pitching matchup just because it's honestly pretty crazy, some of these stats. Of course, we got Clayton Kershaw on the mound against Merrill Kelly from the Diamondbacks. It's kind of polar opposites here. I got Kershaw's stats. He's dominated the Diamondbacks pretty much his whole career, but just this season, 3 starts, he's 2-1 with a 3.18 ERA. And then more specifically, after he faced them once after he came back from injury, which we all know that Kershaw is not completely himself. So if you're going to look take any numbers, I'd say that's probably the start to look at. And in that game, he went 5 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts. He did have the 3 walks, and that's kind of been his issue since he's come back from the injury with the command. But I just saw this stat on Twitter right before we started here. Clayton Kershaw has not lost a start to the D-backs at Dodger Stadium since August of 2012. So it's been 11 years since Clayton Kershaw has lost at home to the Diamondbacks. And then on the other side, we have Merrill Kelly, who has faced the Dodgers 16 times in his career, and he's 0-11 with a 5.49 ERA in 83 innings. This season, he's faced them 4 times, and he's 0-2 with a 3.98 ERA. So he's been a little better this year, not great. So that seems to definitely be advantage Dodgers. But is there any part of that kind of worries you a little bit, or do you feel confident with this pitching matchup?
Yeah, it feels like one of those stats where it always sets up and you just see like, oh yeah, there's no chance that this is going to change, and then it ends up changing just because everyone was talking about it. It feels like that's always how the narrative goes. There's no real logic behind that, like maybe just due for some regression both ways, but it just always seems like every time one of these stats gets brought up, it ends up backfiring and results get reversed. So that's what worries me the most. It's not necessarily about like Kershaw being bad against the Diamondbacks or Kelly being bad against the Dodgers or anything like that. It's just the vibes of it, the feel, like you just never know what's going to happen. And the craziness of baseball, just it's a funny game like that. And it just wouldn't totally surprise me if Kershaw was the one who gave up more runs than Kelly tonight.
Yeah.
That's just baseball.
Yes, I mean, we know Christian Walker has definitely gotten the best of Kershaw in his career, so that's someone you got to watch out for. But where are you at on Kershaw just overall? Obviously, he has not, looked healthy since coming back. The velo's down. The command is off. But he said, I think this past week, he said he's feeling the best he's felt in months. I think Dave Roberts said no pitch count for him tonight, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 85 pitches maybe. So he's probably not going to go too deep into the game. But where's your overall confidence in Kershaw right now?
So we talked about this on the stream, the live show the other night, and I'm definitely more confident in Kershaw than when he first came off the IL. He looked like a completely different pitcher at that point than he does now. I still have some concerns. Like I'd be lying if I said it wasn't in the back of my mind that he still doesn't have great stuff. He's relying on essentially one pitch, and he basically needs his command to be perfect. So if one of those things goes wrong, it has the potential just to kind of fall off the rails. He doesn't have a backup pitch he can really rely on at this point. Like maybe he goes to his curveball more, but I don't think that's going to be too effective, just going fastball, curveball all game. So he really needs that slider to work, and he's been able to make it work so far, but it's still a little concerning that he's not the same pitcher he has been throughout his career at this point, and he's pitching injured still, even if he does feel better.
Yeah, I definitely think it's not ideal. Like you'd rather have your game 1 starter be fully healthy and ready to give you length. I do think the off days within the series kind of works in the Dodgers' favor here, where you don't necessarily need to get 5 or 6 innings out of Kershaw. Like if he gets through 3 and he gets into a jam in the 4th inning there, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a quick hook there, knowing you got a fresh bullpen. You got a ton of arms down there that are all ready to go. So what do you think? If they could get 4 innings out of Kershaw tonight, would you take that?
Yeah, I think I'd be really happy with that, especially since it seems like Sheehan's going to follow him. And if you can get 4 innings from each of them, that takes you through 8 innings. Then you go to Evan Phillips or Gratterall, or even if it's a lefty coming up, maybe you go to Vesia. People don't want to hear that, but I think Dave's going to play. Dave's going to play the matchups more than playing set closer and all that, I think. So I think 4 innings would be really good. I have a lot of trust in Sheehan following him. He's been phenomenal recently. So if they get 4 from each of those guys, like you're in a really good spot.
Yeah. Overall, I think this is the best I've felt about the Dodger bullpen in a while. I'd say I think they got a lot of quality arms, back there, whether it be the high leverage guys or the guys like Emmett Sheehan, like you mentioned, who's looked really good the last few weeks. So I definitely think if you could get 3 or 4 innings and Kershaw's laboring, his command's off, then I wouldn't be surprised if they have a quick hook there. Let's talk lineups real quick. the Dodgers pretty much stuck with their same right-handed their lineup against right-handed pitching that they've had all season. It's Mookie, Freddie, Will, Muncy, JD, Jay Hay, David Peralta gets the start in the 7 spot, Outman, and then Miguel Rojas batting 9th. Any surprises there for you? Maybe Chris Taylor in for David Peralta in left.
I'm not surprised because Dave said we would see the regular season lineup coming into this. I thought they probably should not go with Peralta. He was my pick for their X Factor kind of player this week. Like the narrative of him facing his former team is probably going to be there. It'll be fun. That's like the kind of thing where baseball, it's going to be fun and make you laugh about that kind of stuff. But he hasn't been playing well recently. Chris Taylor has outperformed him significantly, so I thought they might end up going with that. But it's the kind of thing where we talked about this before. Like they didn't sit Cody Bellinger last year until their season was on the line. And I feel like they're going to kind of ride that same wave with Peralta. He's one of their guys. He was signed to be a platoon player, and that's what they're going to use him as.
Yeah, I agree. Game 1, you give him the start. If he goes 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, then maybe you have a different plan for Game 2. But I definitely think he's earned the right to be in there for Game 1. One thing I see some people talking about in the comments, and I've kind of thought about this myself too. Are you fine with them leaving Will Smith in the 3-hole? I know he wasn't exactly great the last couple months of the regular season, but it's still Will Smith at the end of the day, or would you have maybe considered flipping him and JD and putting JD 3rd and Will 5th?
I would have considered it, but I don't think that's going to make a huge difference either way. A lot of studies have shown that the number 5 hitter is a prime RBI spot, so it helps to have another elite bat behind Mookie and Freeman, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's really going to make a difference. If they end up losing the series, it's not going to be because Will Smith was batting 3rd and JD was batting 5th. So I don't think it matters too much.
Yeah, I've thought about it a little, and I think I land with you. And I also think just, moving Will down, that could mess with his confidence. I think leaving him there shows that you have the confidence in him. And I think he'll bounce back. He's kind of come up with some big hits in the playoffs in recent years. So hopefully, he could get it going here. I see Matt with a little update, 6:27 first pitch. So I guess we got a little more time here. We're probably not going to go all the way up to first pitch, but I guess the Braves game. Let's check the score on that real quick, see where that's at, because they're not going to start the Dodgers till that ends. Still 3-0 Phillies. So the Braves lineup, that's kind of what makes you a little nervous about that full week off there as the top 2 seeds. I mean, there's always, there's a lot said in baseball about, momentum and getting hot and riding that wave kind of, and unfortunately for the top 2 seeds, you get a full week off, and you risk potentially coming out, flat the way the Braves did today. Are you worried about that at all?
Yeah, I think that might honestly be one of my biggest concerns. We saw it last year. Both teams that got a bye through the wild card were eliminated by the wild card teams, and that was the Braves and Dodgers. And this year they said they tried to increase the intensity of their practices, but as the season was winding down and the Dodgers weren't really playing for anything, Roberts and all the players were talking about how hard it is to pick up that intensity after you lower it. So that's a concern. I definitely think it's a real thing that they're going to have to try and stay away from. Like, you have to keep up that energy and that intensity and that urgency. Roberts talked about wanting to manage this postseason with more urgency before, but it's really difficult for players to take a week off of not playing competitive baseball and then go out there on the biggest stage and perform against a team that just swept that opponent. They're playing hot. They have confidence. So it is a real concern, and it's something they're going to have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking, I mean, I know the Diamondbacks didn't have the best record, but all that's out the window at this point. They look really good in that Brewers series. They look like they're kind of starting to get hot here. So I definitely think I don't want to call Game 1 a must win by any means. Like, I don't think if the Dodgers lose tonight, the series is over, but you definitely want to come out and set the tone and show that you've kind of learned from what happened last year. Like you said, Dave is kind of going to manage with more urgency, I guess you could say. So that's a good thing to me. Let's get into some predictions here. Just for tonight's game, I know we've made our series predictions already. So let's get a Kershaw final stat line. Let's get like an X factor on the offensive side of who you think's going to come up with a big hit, or that someone on the Arizona side maybe, and then a final score prediction.
Okay, with Kershaw, I'm going 4 2/3, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts. For the offensive X factor, I'm gonna say David Peralta, just because I've been
Okay.
kind of sticking with him. My postseason randomness. Chris Taylor should probably be in there, but that's why David Peralta's gonna prove us all wrong. And on the Diamondbacks, like it's got to be Christian Walker. He's the guy who's given Kershaw so many troubles throughout his entire career when they
Mm-hmm.
faced each other. And if they win, they're probably going to need Walker to come through with a big hit.
And final score prediction. You picking the
Final
D-backs
score.
here, game one, or?
I'll say 5-3 Dodgers in game one.
All right, that's statistically the average score of every baseball game is 5-3. So I like that. There, you're going with the numbers. I think my predictions are pretty similar to yours. I think Kershaw will only go 4, so a little less than you're saying. I think he'll give up 1 earned run, a solo homer from Christian Walker, who we know has gotten him a bunch of times. I think the offensive X factor for the Dodgers, I think it's the guy we just talked about. I think it's Will Smith. I think he's going to come up in some big spots with, I think Mookie and Freddie are going to get on base. Potentially right in that first inning, we could see Will Smith up there with a couple guys on base with a chance to set the tone early. So I'm taking Will Smith. And then my final score prediction, I'll say 6-2 Dodgers. I think they score a few runs early. They get to Merrill Kelly early. I think he'll settle in a little bit after that, get through 5 or 6. And then the Dodgers bullpen, I think will shut it down. So if you got any other, I see some score predictions here in the chat. If anyone else wants to throw them up, we'll throw them in. And then in a second here, we'll get into some questions. If anyone has any questions, as always, all caps question, and then ask your question, and we'll get into it.
I'll throw out Tommy Pham could be an X factor for the Diamondbacks too. I think they'll have to watch out for him. He was swinging a really great bat this year. He got traded over the Diamondbacks from the Mets when the Mets were selling, and he's put up pretty elite numbers, especially against left-handed pitching. I'm pretty sure we talked about him as a target for the Dodgers, and he was connected there. So yeah, Pham could make an impact too, and Kershaw definitely needs to watch out for him as well.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Tommy Pham, but for some reason, whenever he's playing against the Dodgers, I always feel a little nervous, like he's always gonna come up with the big hit. So I think that's a good call there. He bats third in that Diamondbacks lineup, and they're kind of constructed similar to the Dodgers, where in realist, like I think they have their best 2 players in the first 2 spots with Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll. So Tommy Pham is kind of in that similar situation as Will Smith, where he might come up with some guys on base. Again, if you got questions, throw them in the chat. Questions with all caps. We got one here from Matty Man 5. Will the Phillies sweep the Braves? Blake, I'll give this one to you.
I'll say no because the Braves are talented, but the Phillies are looking pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think that's that's fair to say that the Braves aren't going to get swept. I don't think that's much of a hot take at all. Here we go. We got another prediction. I think the Phillies have a chance in that series though, but I'm still gonna, even if the Braves lose this game, I'm still gonna pick them to win the series overall. I just think there's too much talent over there, and I know the Phillies have a lot of talent as well, but I don't think you're gonna hold down that Braves offense for too long. But we don't need to get ahead of ourselves. We got Dodgers Diamondbacks game 1 coming up. Well, I said I didn't want to get your series prediction before. Let's actually get your series prediction though, Blake, because I wasn't able to watch the live show last night, so I'm curious what you have to say.
I said Dodgers in 4. It seems like the safe bet, but I think my first prediction I made before we even found out who their opponent was, it would be Dodgers over Brewers in 4 or Dodgers over Diamondbacks in 5. And that was just kind of me saying like the randomness of baseball. Like, of course, they'd take the worst team to an extra game.
Yeah, I made my prediction earlier this week as well. We had the same prediction, Dodgers in 4. So that's either a really good thing or a really bad thing. We'll see. We got another question here. Will the Dodgers activate Ahmed Rosario for the Diamondbacks series? Well, I'm presuming he means for the NLCS. He is not on the roster for the Diamondbacks series. At each round you're allowed to make changes, so it could be they could make a different change for the NLCS depending. I think part of what left Rosario off the roster this time around was that the Diamondbacks are very right-handed heavy on the mound, and he hasn't really he fares better against left-handed pitching. So maybe if you advance and you're facing either the Phillies or Braves, I don't really know what their roster is like necessarily, but if they got more left-handed pitching, we could see Rosario back on the roster here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're going to go series by series with their roster and kind of set it based on the matchups. They could activate Rosario if there's an injury, but that would mean the player who gets removed from the roster would not be able to play in the NLCS, but he could come back for the World Series. So it's a possibility, but at this point, I don't really see it happening.
Mm-hmm. Here's another question. Do we know for certain if Will Smith is 100% peak health condition? I know he dealt with the rib issue earlier in the year, but I'm pretty sure he's recovered for that. It was more just getting his mechanics back, right? Is that kind of what they've been saying?
That's what they're saying. The Dodgers are not the best with their injury updates all the time.
Of course.
So it's hard to know for sure. But from everything they said, Will Smith is healthy, and it's just more of a slump and mechanical issue than anything else.
Yeah.
And also, real quick before we move on to any other questions, we got a super chat from Carlos. I'm not sure if you missed it, but
yeah, 6-2 Dodgers. I like that prediction. I'm pretty sure that's the same exact score I gave. So me and Carlos are on the same page there.
Thank you, Carlos, for that.
Yes. As always, if you do a super chat, we'll try to get to it as quick as possible. That was an oversight on my part. I missed it. Another question here. Who will go deep for the Dodgers tonight? Another prediction question. You got
yeah, someone asked me this one already. I picked Freddie Freeman, so I'll stay with that one.
Okay. I think I'll say Jason Hayward. Why not? Back in the playoffs. Experienced guy. Why not? Are you guys fine with not being first place this year since we didn't have to face the Phillies? This is a good question to me because I see both sides of it. Obviously, I don't think anyone would disagree that the Diamondbacks are a better first-round matchup than the Phillies. But at the same time, if the Dodgers and Braves both advance, the Dodgers will not have home field advantage, and we all know how good the Dodgers have been at home this year. So where do you stand on this? What do you think is the more preferable route here?
Looking in hindsight, it's more preferable, but I think throughout the regular season, you'd still always want to shoot for that number one spot. It's kind of the thing that happened last year too, where the Braves had a weaker matchup than the Dodgers, even though the Dodgers were ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just they probably should reseed after the wild card round to let the number one seed play the weakest team left, but they haven't done that for whatever reason. So I'm grateful that it's the Diamondbacks and not the Phillies. No disrespect to the Diamondbacks. I just think the Phillies are on another level than them. They're more postseason ready. They have some more superstars on that team. So, yeah, looking in hindsight, like definitely grateful for that, but it's just something where it's gone both ways for them already. So you just always got to shoot for that number one seed.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you go and set out to win as many games as possible. I think home field advantage is most important. I think this year is kind of a rare year where I guess it happens more often than not, but where the lower seed is like the Braves are playing the better team as the one seed, and I'm in agreement with you. I think reseeding should absolutely be a thing. This year it happens to benefit the Dodgers, so I'm not complaining. But overall, I think it should be reseeded. I think if you're the best team, you should be facing the worst team left. But hey, that's not our fight to fight this year. We'll let the Braves worry about that. And as far as the Dodgers go, hopefully they could take care of business tonight and kind of set the tone for this series. Any final thoughts here before we wrap this, Blake?
Not really. We just gotta get ready to get this started already. It feels like we've been waiting forever with that week off. So ready for it to get started and see what this postseason holds.
Yeah, I feel like the whole regular season, there's obviously a lot of games, but it just kind of feels like, especially when you're the Dodgers and it's almost a foregone conclusion that you're making the postseason, it just feels like a bunch of exhibition games. And now the real games start. Obviously, the marathon turns into a sprint, as they say. But yeah, that's going to do it for our pregame show here. We got first pitch coming up in a little bit. Me and Blake will be back here after the game, hopefully celebrating a W with the post-game show. So join us here after the game. It may be a few minutes after the game ends, but pay attention. We'll post on social media when we're going live. Hopefully, like I said, celebrating a W. But thank you for everyone for joining us. We're gonna be doing these pregame shows before every game this postseason, and then postgame shows to follow as well. So make sure, if you haven't already, to like and subscribe and follow us. And again, thanks for joining, and go Dodgers.